dear friends, thank you so much for joining me once again, Liz at Home. I'm going to be sharing some watercolor with you this morning. I recently bought some Daniel Smith Sleeping Beauty Turquoise, which has to be the most expensive watercolor paint I've ever bought in my life. So I decided I'm going to use that as the basis for my color palette, and I'll be mixing it up with one or two other colors as we go. So I set up my page with some washi tape and I've started playing around. The paint is a greenish turquoise, and I'm doing a wet on wet playing with this, and I have done two already, and I must say I find it a strange paint to work with. Daniel Smith calls it a unique and vibrant blue. The gemstone comes from Sleeping Beauty. Let me try again. The gemstone comes from Sleeping Beauty Mountain in Arizona, where we found a deposit that lives up to our high expectations. It is light, fast, and permanent, with none of the transient color fade that plagues most turquoise. So that's what they say about it. Then I was going to mix it with a kind of a purpley thing, and I decided not to, and I went instead to my favorite indigo blue. I just love indigo. I don't know, it seems to make me feel happy. This is a Lucas paint, and I just did some dotting over. It's a cold and rainy day today outside, so I'm all dressed up, still in my father's old jersey, if you can see it. I think this jersey has to be about 40 years old. Shame my dad passed away about 15 years ago, and I still wear this jersey when I paint. It gives me a lot of comfort. So this is the indigo that I'm playing with, and I actually prefer it. It was a much less expensive paint than the Daniel Smith Sleeping Beauty Turquoise, but I actually prefer it. I know it's a different color, and maybe that's what's at the root of the matter. So I like what happened on that little block. And then I decided, no, I promised myself I would use the Sleeping Beauty Turquoise, so let me try again. And then I mixed it up a bit more and noticed a bead of water on that, so I now needed to get another brush and try and not exactly dry off the block, but spread the water about so that it's more consistent. And then I did find that this spread better, so maybe it was my water control that was at fault. It's not a bad color, and I could imagine using it. I think I have used it on a bit of sea, and I think it needs some playing with. And now I'm mixing it with a bit of core turquoise. I wanted to see what happened, because usually the core pushes everything else out of its way. But interestingly enough, it didn't with this. It sort of stayed like a good child where it belonged. So I added some dots. And then I'm back to my Sleeping Beauty Turquoise, and I thought, let me try kind of diagonal stripes and see if they bleed into each other. But I actually think my paper had got a bit dry, so the paint is not really moving, and I'm back to my indigo, which I've watered down a little bit. Such a satisfying color, and that's moving into the turquoise, because the turquoise is now a little bit wet, and I'm using a little bit of cerulean blue, which is a beautiful paint, but that's too much of a stripe, so I didn't like that. So I needed to do my diddly dots all over the show and play with that and see what it does when we just leave it. I always become inspired when I use the indigo blue. It's so weird. Funny how colors affect us. So I'm back to this turquoise, trying to add some dots, but I've got too much on my paintbrush, so I just wiped a little bit off. And that looks better there, and trying some more dots, and yet again the paper's not really that wet anymore, but the paint is moving a little bit. And so now we're into our last block, just about. I like how it melts into the indigo there. I think that's very satisfying. I just want to move some of these puddles a little bit. So let's just look. I think this block has become dry, and so I'm just wetting it again, trying to avoid puddles on it. And then I'm going to add my Daniel Smith turquoise. This color, I think, would be very nice if one was doing sort of Aztec patterns or Mexican, or I don't know, like those colors. I should try one day. And I like it when you've got more on your brush, and it's now, because I finally got my water correctly on the page, actually moving nicely. So as usual, don't blame your tools, bad artist, rather get yourself right. I mean, that would be quite a nice sea, with just as it is now, just with the whites. But then I just wanted to drop in some salt and see what that does. That's always very satisfying. So sprinkle, 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 and we'll see what that does, and leave it to dry when I'm finished, and then I'll come back and do some doodling. So the salt is dry and has been dispensed with, and I'm using some Art Alternative waterproof fine liners, and I'm going to do some doodling with them. So I'm going to speed the video up a little bit because I think it will become very long otherwise, and we'll just see how we go. So I'm probably going to put some music on now for you to listen to. I'm doing various doodles, and I'll stop when I have something that I want to say. I hope you enjoy watching and listening to the lovely music from Epidemic Sound. They do have such super tracks. Well, so we're now getting to the end of the doodles, and I must just share with you that the doodle in the top row on the right-hand side I was very, very unhappy with. I had been doing these kind of Zentangle doodles and was happy with them, and then I don't know what happens to my brain, but I get this kind of, oh no, I must do something more creative and mustn't do Zentangles. And so I thought I'd try and follow the shapes in the paint, but I mean, it looked like the dog's breakfast. So at the end of the day, I went over that square with some acrylic paint. And then I had a little minor mishap in that my video didn't record the end of this doodle and the very last one. So, and it didn't record me showing you what paint I used. It is a De La Rowney acrylic paint, and I just went over that and then doodled on top of it, which actually worked remarkably well. Because I'd used the acrylic paint quite thickly, I'm not an expert at acrylic paint at all, and I'm never quite sure what you're supposed to do with it. So it was clogging around the nib, and I had to wipe it off. But other than that, and it looks slightly different to the watercolor, it luckily covered the dog's breakfast kind of doodling that I'd done. I got myself in a bit of a quandary with this one because I've mentioned before that I'm very dyslexic, and I found myself becoming so confused about what direction I was supposed to be doing these lines in. So it's not completely correct, but I really enjoyed doing it. I was listening to an audiobook as I was doing this, and I started to feel as if I'm starting to enjoy painting and doodling and things a bit more again. I don't know, I've been really struggling just lately. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I do hope you will share a little comment with me, even if just to say hi. I would really love to hear from you. And if you've reached this end of the video, I thank you so much for watching the whole thing, and have a very good day. I'm going to unveil this now and then show you the end product. And luckily I got some nice clean edges. My paper ripped a little bit. I'm actually quite happy with how this turned out, and I'm very pleased I fixed up the end. Bye-bye now.